Blood stained the hem of Chiamaka's yellow Ankara dress, warm and wet against her dark skin. The fabric, purchased from a Nigerian vendor in Dongdaemun for less than it was worth, now bore the weight of a choice that would alter the trajectory of her entire existence. Her hands trembled violently as she stared into Young Ha-jun's cold, unwavering eyes, dark like Seoul's midnight sky, watching her from that wheelchair with an intensity that made her breath catch in her throat and her heart hammer against her ribs. She should have walked away when she first saw the men dragging him into that alley. Should have pretended she didn't hear the gunshot echo through Itaewon's back streets like a crack of thunder in the October night. Should have run as fast as her aching feet could carry her back to the false safety of her tiny apartment. But she didn't. And that one decision, that single moment of compassion overriding survival instinct, destroyed everything she thought she knew about safety, about love, about trust, about the razor-thin line between protection and possession, between sanctuary and imprisonment. If you want to see how far desperation can push two broken people together, how violence and tenderness can coexist in the same breath, hit that subscribe button for love and tension. You won't believe where this story ends, or how it transforms two damaged souls into something fiercer than either could have been alone. Her name was Chiamaka Okeke, a Nigerian woman who'd come to Seoul 2 years ago chasing better dreams than Lagos offered, fleeing demons she thought she'd left behind in West Africa's humid embrace. This was the night she saved a monster, not a villain, not a criminal in the simple sense, a monster with a beautiful paralyzed body and a heart that beat for vengeance, for control, for something he'd lost when a trusted friend's knife had severed his spine and stolen his legs. 11:47 p.m. Her feet ached in those second-hand heels she'd bought from a street vendor in Hongdae, black pumps that didn't quite fit but were cheap enough that she could afford them on a restaurant salary. Her back hurt from double shifts at the Korean barbecue restaurant where she worked, where customers sometimes called her exotic, sometimes called her worse, where her manager's hands wandered when he thought no one was watching. All she wanted was to reach her tiny Hongdae apartment, peel off her clothes that smelled of smoke and grilled meat, stand under the weak shower spray, and forget another day of whispered slurs about the African girl who didn't belong in their clean, homogeneous city. The parking lot behind the restaurant stretched empty and dark, shadows pooling in corners where the flickering streetlights couldn't quite reach. Cold October wind cut through her thin jacket, a stupid choice, she knew, but she'd been running late that morning, and the heavier coat was at the dry cleaner she couldn't really afford. The shortcut through the parking lot shaved 10 minutes off her walk to the bus stop, 10 minutes that meant everything when you were bone-tired and your feet felt like they were made of broken glass. Then she heard it, a low, pained gasp that cut through the wind's whistle, and that was when she saw him. Before the story continues, let me say this: if any of these stories comfort you, entertain you, or make you feel understood, please subscribe. It's free, but it means everything to this channel. Now, let's continue. Young Ha-jun lay crumpled against the concrete wall like discarded trash, like something worthless that Seoul's glittering facade tried to hide. His expensive black suit jacket, Italian wool, she'd learned later, worth more than 3 months of her salary, was soaked dark, with blood that looked black in the dim light. His legs sprawled at wrong angles, useless appendages that had been that way for 3 years, ever since Park Jin-woo, his closest friend, his brother in all but blood, had put a knife between his 4th and 5th vertebrae and left him bleeding in a Gangnam alley. 3 men stood over him, speaking rapid Korean she barely understood, despite 2 years of struggling with the language. Gee, but the gun in one man's hand, a sleek black pistol that caught the streetlight's gleam, needed no translation. Violence spoke every language fluently. Hey! The word burst from Chiamaka's mouth before logic, before survival instinct, before common sense could catch up and drag her back to safety. 3 heads turned in unison. The gunman's eyes narrowed, calculating, assessing. He was tall, scarred, with the look of someone who'd killed before and would kill again without losing sleep. Walk away, girl. His Korean was clear enough, the threat in his tone even clearer. His Korean was accented but understandable, and Chiamaka's survival instincts, honed from Lagos streets where she'd watched her uncle bleed out while neighbors pretended blindness. Where violence was a daily reality that shaped children into cautious adults, screamed different instructions. She pulled out her phone with shaking fingers, held it up like a weapon, like a shield. I'm calling police. No. Jung's voice cut through the night, rough, commanding, holding authority despite his position sprawled in his own blood. His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her gasp, that seemed to reach inside her chest and squeeze her heart. No police. The gunman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. But something in Jung's tone, some quality of absolute certainty, of contained power even in vulnerability, made him hesitate. Another man whispered urgently in rapid Korean, words tumbling over each other. The third glanced toward the street, body tensing. Sirens wailed in the distance, unrelated. I'm probably heading to some other tragedy in Seoul's endless night, but close enough to matter. This isn't over, the gunman spat at Jung, his voice carrying a promise of future violence. Then to Chiamaka, his eyes raking over her with contempt that made her skin crawl. You just made a very stupid choice, African bitch. Kang Min Seok doesn't forget faces. They vanished into shadows like smoke, like ghosts, leaving only the echo of their threat hanging in the cold air. Chiamaka stood frozen, phone clutched in her hand so tightly her knuckles ached, staring at the man who'd just saved her from becoming a witness they'd need to silence. Jung watched her with those unnerving eyes, dark and deep and full of calculations she couldn't begin to guess. Blood pooled beneath him, spreading slowly across the concrete in a dark stain that would probably never wash away completely. You're bleeding, she said stupidly, her nurse's training kicking in despite the surreal situation. Observant. His lips quirked despite obvious pain, a ghost of humor that seemed wrong in the moment but somehow fitting. Are you going to help or just state facts while I bleed out? Her nursing training from Lagos, cut short when her family's money dried up after her father's business collapsed, when dreams of becoming a doctor shattered against the hard reality of poverty, kicked in fully. She crossed to him, her heels clicking on concrete, knees hitting cold pavement hard enough to bruise. Her hands assessed the wound in his shoulder with practiced efficiency, fingers probing gently despite his sharp intake of breath. And through. The bullet had gone clean through, missing major arteries by what looked like centimeters. Lucky. Incredibly, impossibly lucky. You need a hospital, she said, already calculating what supplies she'd need, what she had at home, what she'd have to improvise. No hospitals. They asked questions. He winced as her fingers probed the exit wound, checking for fragments, for damage she couldn't see. You know what you're doing? Enough. She stripped off her jacket, pressed it against the bleeding, applying firm pressure. The fabric immediately soaked through, warm and wet. What's your name? Does it matter? I'm about to save your life. Yeah, it matters. She met his gaze, refusing to look away from those intense eyes. Something flickered in those cold depths. Surprise? Respect? Something harder to name? Jung Ha-jun. Chiamaka Okeke. She kept pressure on the wound, her mind calculating rapidly. I have medical supplies at my apartment, basic stuff. Bandages, antiseptic, pain medication I saved from when I was sick. But this needs proper antibiotics, professional stitching, someone who actually knows what they're doing. Can you do it? She thought about lying, about telling him she wasn't qualified, about walking away from this disaster waiting to happen. I can try. I trained as a nurse in Lagos before I had to stop. But if infection sets in, if I miss something, if there's internal damage I can't see, then I'll deal with it. He reached up, his hand clamping around her wrist with terrifying strength for a man who'd just been shot, who'd lost enough blood to make most people pass out. No hospitals, no police. Yes or no? Chiamaka Okeke? Chiamaka should have said no, should have run, should have let Seoul's underworld handle its own bleeding, its own violence, its own consequences. But there was something in his eyes, something that recognized the desperation in hers, something that said they were both survivors, both fighters, both people who'd learned that the world wasn't kind and help didn't come from the right places. Yes, she whispered. His grip loosened, became almost gentle, his thumb brushing against her pulse point. Smart woman, brave woman. Getting him to her apartment took 30 agonizing minutes that felt like hours. Jung couldn't walk. Those useless legs dragged as she helped him into her battered third-hand Honda, a car she'd bought for less than it was worth from another desperate immigrant. He directed her through back streets with the confidence of someone who knew Seoul's dark geography intimately, who'd traveled these paths before, who understood the city's hidden veins. She didn't ask questions, not yet. Survival first, curiosity later. Her apartment was a shoebox, one room in a building that should have been condemned, barely furnished with items other people had thrown away, but clean because she couldn't control much in her life, but she could control cleanliness. She helped him onto her bed, the only furniture besides a desk she'd found on the street and a chair with one wobbly leg. He collapsed back with a grunt, face pale beneath naturally tanned skin, blood still seeping through the makeshift bandage. Stay conscious, she ordered, gathering supplies with hands that had finally stopped shaking. The bandages she'd hoarded from free medical clinics. soju, Korean rice alcohol, for sterilization because she couldn't afford proper antiseptic, a sewing kit because she couldn't afford proper sutures, everything improvised, everything marginal, everything barely enough. Bossy, Young murmured, eyes tracking her movements with an alertness that shouldn't have been possible given his blood loss. Necessary. She cut away his shirt with scissors that weren't quite sharp enough, revealing a body that was all lean muscle and old scars, some from fights, some from something worse. His paralysis started at the waist. She could see where the muscle tone changed, where voluntary control ended and involuntary function began, the dividing line of his disability. How did this happen? She gestured to his legs with the scissors. Which part? The gunshot or the paralysis? The paralysis. He was quiet long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer, that she'd crossed some invisible line. Then, someone I trusted put a knife in my spine, 3 years ago, between L4 and L5, severed the spinal cord completely, left me for dead in an alley not unlike the one where you found me tonight. His voice held no emotion, but his hands clenched into fists so tight his knuckles went white. Park Jin-woo, my best friend, my brother. He was wrong about the dead part. Got it. Chimaka poured soju over the wound without warning. Jung's jaw tightened, but he didn't make a sound, didn't cry out, just breathed through clenched teeth. Let's focus on surviving tonight. Revenge can wait. She worked efficiently, hands steady despite the surreal situation. Despite the fact that she was treating a gunshot wound in her illegal sublet apartment for a man who was clearly dangerous, clearly involved in things that could get her killed. This man was dangerous. Everything about him screamed it. The expensive suit, the casual way he'd taken a bullet, the cold calculation in his eyes that assessed, evaluated, cataloged everything. But her hands were already bloodstained, and turning back now meant nothing, meant throwing away the choice she'd already made. You're good at this, Jung said as she stitched the exit wound with careful precision, each stitch as neat as she could make it with thread meant for fabric, not flesh. Had practice. Lagos isn't kind to the weak. My uncle taught me basic field medicine before he... She didn't finish. Didn't need to. You're not from around Itaewon. No, a Gangnam. The wealthy district, the heart of Seoul's money and power. That explained the suit, the confidence, the way he'd given orders even while bleeding. What's a Nigerian nurse doing in Seoul's back alleys at midnight? Surviving. Same as you, apparently. She tied off the thread, started on the entry wound. Though your survival looks more expensive than mine. He laughed, a rough pain sound that made her worry about his ribs. Appearances can be deceiving. We're both just trying not to die. The setting is different, that's all. She finished the last stitch, bandaged both wounds tight enough to restrict movement but not circulation. You need rest. Antibiotics if infection starts. I'll get some from the clinic tomorrow. Tell them I need them for myself. Keep the wound dry. Come back in 3 days so I can check the stitches. On change the dressing, I'll send someone. Fine. She turned away, cleaning blood from her hands with soap that smelled like fake flowers, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky and cold. There's water by the bed. I'll sleep on the floor. No. He shifted carefully, making space on the narrow bed. I don't bite, and your floor looks uncomfortable. I'm not... She turned back, ready to argue. Chimaka. Her name in his mouth sounded like a claiming, like possession, like something more than just syllables. You saved my life tonight. Risked your own safety, brought me to your home. The least I can do is share your own bed without making you sleep on concrete. I promise I'm too shot to be a threat to your virtue. She was too tired to argue, too aware of his blood on her dress, her hands, and her floor. Too aware that she'd crossed a line tonight that couldn't be uncrossed. She lay down beside him, careful not to jostle his wounds, hyper-aware of his presence. His warmth, despite the blood loss, his steady breathing, the danger radiating from him like heat from a furnace. Thank you, Jung said quietly into the darkness. Not many people would have stopped. Even fewer would have helped. Don't thank me yet. You might still die of infection. Then I'll die knowing the last thing I saw was worth it. His hand found hers in the darkness, squeezed gently. You're extraordinary, Chimaka Okeke. I think you're going to change my life. I think you're delirious from blood loss. Maybe, but I'm usually right about people. Chimaka didn't ask what he meant. She closed her eyes and fell into uneasy sleep. Unaware, she'd just chained herself to Seoul's most dangerous ghost, unaware that salvation and damnation often wore the same face. She woke to an empty bed, sunlight streaming through her thin curtains, and a stack of bills on her desk that made her heart stop. 50 million won. She counted it 3 times with shaking hands, unable to believe what she was seeing. Roughly $37,000 US, more than she'd make in 2 years at the restaurant. more than her family had seen in a lifetime back in Lagos. A note in precise handwriting lay on top. For your trouble and your silence. You saved my life. This doesn't begin to repay that debt, but it's a start. If you need anything, anything at all, call this number. JHJ. A business card accompanied the note. Simple, elegant, expensive paper. Just a phone number, no name, no title. Chiamaka stared at the money, hands shaking. This was blood money. Payment for silence, for complicity, for crossing a line she could never uncross. She should return it, should track him down and give it back and wash her hands of this entire situation. She didn't. She used $5 million to pay 3 months' rent in advance, finally able to breathe without the landlord's threats hanging over her head. Used $2 million to buy proper medical supplies, real antiseptic, real bandages, real antibiotics from a pharmacy where the clerk didn't ask questions, and hid the rest under her mattress, telling herself it was insurance. Against what, she didn't know. Against poverty, against desperation, against the future. 2 weeks passed. She convinced herself Jung Ha-jun was a fever dream, a dangerous hallucination brought on by exhaustion and too many double shifts. She worked her shifts at the restaurant, dodged her manager Mr. Kim's wandering hands with practiced ease, ignored the whispers from Korean customers who looked at her dark skin with thinly veiled disgust, who sometimes refused to eat food she'd touched. She was almost successful at forgetting. Almost. Then, the black Mercedes appeared outside her building on a Tuesday morning, sleek and expensive, and completely out of place in her rundown neighborhood. Chiamaka recognized the car, or rather, recognized the type. The kind that appeared in Korean dramas, the kind that meant money and power and things she didn't want to be involved with. The driver stepped out, a man in his 50s with the bearing of ex-military, and bowed slightly. Ms. Okeki? Mister? Jung requests your presence. Her stomach dropped to her feet. I'm working. He's cleared it with your employer. You have the week off. Paid. The driver's tone was polite but firm, the kind of politeness that wasn't really politeness at all. Your salary will be covered, plus compensation for lost tips. I don't... Please, Ms. Okeki, he insists, and Mr. Young is not a man who asks twice. Refusal wasn't really an option. She could feel it in the driver's stance, in the weight of the request, in the knowledge that Jung Ha-jun was not someone who accepted no easily. The Mercedes drove her through Seoul's morning traffic to a private hospital in Gangnam, the kind where rooms cost more than her yearly salary, where the lobby looked like a 5-star hotel, and where other patients wore designer clothes and carried bags worth more than her car. Jung sat in his wheelchair by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline, wearing a black silk shirt that probably cost more than everything she owned combined. His shoulder was professionally bandaged now, the wound healing cleanly from what she could see. You came, he said, without turning, somehow sensing her presence. Did I have a choice? Always. He spun the wheelchair to face her, and Chiamaka's breath caught despite her best intentions. In daylight, filtered through expensive windows, he was beautiful. Sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, full lips that softened his face just enough, that intense gaze that seemed to see through her defenses. Paralyzed from the waist down, but radiating power like electricity, like contained lightning. But I'm glad you made this one. Why am I here? She stayed near the door, ready to bolt if necessary. To check my stitches. Your work held perfectly. He gestured to his shoulder. My doctors were impressed. Said whoever treated the initial wound knew exactly what they were doing, that my survival was due to immediate competent care. They wanted to know who my field medic was. What did you tell them? That it was none of their business. His smile was slight, amused. Patient confidentiality works both ways. Glad I could help? Now, if you'll excuse me, I paid your hospital debt. Chiamaka froze mid-turn, her hand on the door handle. What? The $45 million, one you owed Seoul National Hospital, from when you first arrived in Korea 2 years ago and got pneumonia. The debt that's been hanging over you. The accruing interest, threatening deportation. The reason you work doubles and skip meals and live in a place barely fit for habitation. He rolled closer, eyes locked on hers with uncomfortable accuracy. It's gone. Paid in full this morning. You'll receive confirmation within the hour. Her throat closed around words that wouldn't come. That debt had been her nightmare, the shadow over everything, the reason she couldn't save money, couldn't move forward, couldn't breathe. The hospital had saved her life when she'd arrived in Seoul sick and alone, and she'd been paying for that salvation ever since. Why? Because you saved my life, and because I wanted to. He reached out, fingers brushing her hand with surprising gentleness. Have dinner with me, Chiamaka. Mr. Jung. Ha-jun, please, call me Ha-jun. She stepped back, an heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. This isn't appropriate. You're a crippled gangster? His smile held dark amusement, self-awareness that was almost charming. Say it. I won't be offended. I know what I am. Dangerous, she finished, forcing the word past her tight throat. You're dangerous, and I'm just trying to survive here without complications that could get me killed or deported or worse. Too late. His voice softened, became something almost tender. You became my complication the moment you didn't walk away from that alley, the moment you chose compassion over survival instinct. Now I'm returning the favor. By paying my debts? By sending cars? That's not, she struggled for words. That's not how normal people show gratitude. I'm not normal people, and neither are you, or you would have left me to bleed. He tilted his head, studying her. Tell me you don't need help here. Tell me Soul's been kind to you. Tell me you're not tired of fighting alone against a city that doesn't want you. Chimaka wanted to lie, wanted to maintain dignity, independence, the fiction that she was fine, that she was managing, that she didn't wake up some mornings wondering why she bothered. But exhaustion won. 2 years of exhaustion, of struggling, of being alone in a country that made her feel alien every single day. One dinner, she said finally. Then we're done. You don't owe me anything more, and I don't owe you. Deal. His smile was small but genuine. Tonight, 7 o'clock. My driver will pick you up. I can meet you. Chimaka, her name again, that possessive way he said it. Let me do this properly. Please, she nodded, unable to articulate why she was agreeing, why she wasn't running, why some part of her wanted this despite every logical reason to refuse. The dinner was at an exclusive restaurant in Cheongdam-dong, where staff bowed so low to Young their foreheads nearly touched their knees, where the menu had no prices because if you had to ask you couldn't afford it, where Chimaka felt every eye on her dark skin, her cheap dress from the Dongdaemun market, her otherness that couldn't be hidden or explained away. But Jung's attention never wavered. He asked about Lagos with genuine interest, about her family with careful questions that didn't pry too hard, about the dreams that brought her to Korea, and the realities that had reshaped those dreams into something smaller, more survivable. My sister got sick, Chimaka said. Pushing bulgogi around her plate with silver chopsticks that cost more than her monthly food budget. Breast cancer, needed medicine we couldn't afford, treatment that was available but might as well have been on the moon for all the good it did us. I heard Korea paid well for workers, especially in service industries, so, she shrugged, trying for casual despite the pain that still lived in her chest. Came here, sent money back every month, scrimped and saved and worked myself sick. Then she died anyway, 3 months after I arrived, and I was stuck here with debt, and no reason to go back to Lagos except more poverty. I'm sorry. The words sounded genuine, not perfunctory. Don't be. Life's cruel to most people. We adapt or we die. She met his gaze. You know that better than most. Jung's eyes gleamed with recognition, or with respect. Yes, we do. He leaned forward, elbows on the table despite the formal setting. Tell me, the men who shot me, the ones in the alley, did you recognize any of them? Should I have? They work for Kang Min-seok, rival organization. He's been trying to eliminate me for months, ever since I refused to cede territory in Itaewon to his operation. His fingers drummed the wheelchair's armrest in a rhythm that spoke of controlled agitation. I think someone in my crew tipped him off about my location that night, about my schedule, my route, my vulnerability. Chimaka's instincts prickled, the same instincts that had kept her alive in Lagos, that had warned her about Victor before she'd listened. The tall one, with the scar on his jaw, running from his ear to his chin. He kept looking back while the others focused on you, like he was nervous about something, not like the others who were just doing a job. Jung's expression sharpened, became predatory. You remember details. I remember everything that might kill me. It's how you survive. She set down her chopsticks. Why are you asking? Are you planning something? Always. He reached across the table, took her hand. Chimaka, I want you to work for me. She nearly choked on her water. Excuse me? My organization needs someone with medical skills, someone I can trust, someone who's observant, quick-thinking, who doesn't panic under pressure, someone who is desperate enough to say yes? She pulled her hand back, anger flashing hot. I'm not interested in becoming a criminal, in getting involved in whatever you do, You already are. His tone was matter of fact, not cruel, but honest. The moment you chose not to call the police, the moment you treated my wounds, the moment you accepted my money, you're already involved, Chimaka. The only question is whether you accept it consciously or pretend you're still innocent. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. We both know that. He pulled out his phone, turned it toward her. This is what's fair. The photo on the screen made her blood run cold. Grainy, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens, but unmistakably her. running to her car with Young leaning heavily against her, blood visible even in the poor lighting. Kang Min Seok's men saw your face that night, Jung continued quietly. They know you helped me. They've been watching you, waiting to see how I'd respond, whether you're important to me or just a random good Samaritan. He scrolled to another photo, her leaving her apartment building, unaware of being watched. Another, her at the restaurant, serving customers. Whether you join me or not, you're already in danger. I can't protect you indefinitely unless you're officially under my protection. Unless you're mine. Chimaka stared at the photos, at the trap closing around her with mechanical precision, at the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. This is blackmail. This is reality. Jung's voice was soft, almost apologetic, but unyielding. I didn't create this situation, but I can control it. With you beside me, you're untouchable. Alone, you're vulnerable. I'm offering you the only real choice you have. Accept my protection and live, or refuse it and, well, Kang isn't known for his mercy. As what? Your nurse? Your prisoner? She couldn't finish, couldn't voice the possibilities that terrified her. As my partner. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Not servant, not employee, not property. Equal partner. You have skills I need, perspective I lack. I have resources you need, protection you can't get elsewhere. It's mutually beneficial. Nothing about this feels mutual. Then make it mutual. Negotiate. Tell me what you need to make this work. He leaned back, giving her space. I'm not a monster, Chimaka. I'm a businessman who operates outside the law because the law never protected people like me. I won't force you into anything you don't choose. She laughed bitterly. Except you are forcing me. With these photos, with the threat. I'm giving you information. What you do with it is your choice. His gaze was steady, unflinching. I want you to choose to stay, to work with me, to let me protect you. But if you truly want to leave Seoul, to disappear, I'll help you. New identity, new city, enough money to start over anywhere in the world. That offer is genuine. Why would you do that? Because you saved my life when you didn't have to. Because I respect courage. Because He stopped, jaw tightening. Because I like you, Chiamaka Okeki. And I don't want you to suffer for the crime of being kind. She studied him, trying to see past the careful control, the calculated offers, to the truth underneath. I need to think, more than just tonight. Take 3 days, then decide. He gestured to his driver, who appeared instantly. He'll take you home. Man, Chimaka. He caught her hand as she stood. I meant what I said. Every word. You're already mine in the eyes of my enemies. The only question is whether you accept the protection that comes with it. Chimaka spent 3 days in paranoid terror that made her previous struggles seem almost quaint by comparison. Every shadow became a threat. Every stranger on the street might be watching. She jumped at loud noises, couldn't sleep without checking the locks 3 times, saw the scarred man's face in crowds even when logic said it couldn't be him. On the second day, she spotted him for real. The tall man with the scar, watching her restaurant from across the street, not even bothering to hide. Their eyes met through the window. He smiled, slow and predatory, and raised a hand in a mocking wave. Chimaka dropped a tray of dishes. It's the crash making every head in the restaurant turn. Mr. Kim, her manager, grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. What's wrong with you? Do you know how much those cost? She couldn't answer, couldn't look away from the window where the scarred man still stood, still smiled. He was gone by the time Mr. Kim let her go, but the message was clear. We're watching, we're waiting, you can't hide. On the 3rd day, Jung's driver appeared at her door at dawn with a simple message. He's waiting. And Ms. Okeki, the man watching your building yesterday has been handled. Mr. Jung wanted you to know you're safe, for now. She climbed into the Mercedes without argument, without resistance, because what choice did she have? Running would mean looking over her shoulder forever. Fighting would mean dying alone. Accepting meant survival, but even if that survival came with chains. Jung's compound was hidden in Seoul's outskirts, far from the glittering lights of Gangnam, in an area where old money hid behind high walls and traditional values. A traditional Hanok house modified with modern security. Cameras, guards, sensors that probably cost more than her entire building, surrounded by walls high enough to keep out the world, guarded by men who moved with military precision. Inside, luxury met tradition in ways that took her breath away. Silk cushions and jewel tones, dark wood polished to a mirror shine, screens painted with cranes and tigers, and landscapes that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Beautiful and alien and intimidating. Jung waited in a study lined with books and weapons, an incongruous combination that somehow fit him perfectly. Medical texts besides strategy guides, Ancient swords mounted next to modern firearms, knowledge and violence existing side by side. He wore all-black wheelchair positioned behind a massive desk that somehow made him look powerful rather than diminished. "You came," he said simply, looking up from papers he'd been reviewing. "I didn't have a choice." Chiamaka stood straight despite her fear, despite her exhaustion. "Your world doesn't let people walk away, does it?" "No, it doesn't." He rolled from behind the desk into the light. "But I'll give you one anyway, right now, this moment. Leave Seoul. I'll provide money, more than what I gave you before. Documents that will get you anywhere you want to go. Passage to Lagos, London, New York. Anywhere you can imagine starting over. Disappear. Be safe. Live a normal life." She blinked, dethroned by the offer she hadn't expected. "What?" "I won't cage you, Chiamaka. I want you here. Yes, desperately. But not as a prisoner, not unwilling." His eyes burned with intensity that made her chest tight. "Choose freely, with full knowledge of what you're choosing. Stay and be mine. My partner, my ally, my companion. Or go and be safe from all of this. From me, from my enemies, from this world that destroys most people who enter it." It was the freedom itself that trapped her, that made the choice impossible. Because staying meant danger, but also power, protection, a chance to stop running from shadows and poverty and loneliness. Going meant safety, but also more of the same, more struggling, more isolation, more starting over in another hostile city where she'd always be foreign, always be other, always be alone. If I stay, what exactly am I agreeing to? She needed details, needed to understand the cage before she walked into it. Marriage. Her heart stopped, stuttered, restarted too fast. What? A contract marriage. For protection, for legitimacy, for legal status. He pulled papers from his desk drawer, set them in front of her. "You'll be Mrs. Jung Ha-jun, my wife in name and law. It shields you from my enemies. Touching you becomes touching me, and that's a death sentence. Gives you legal status in Korea that can't be challenged or revoked. Access to resources, money, protection. In exchange, you provide medical support when needed," and he hesitated, something almost vulnerable crossing his face. "Companionship. Companionship." She repeated the word, trying to understand its weight. "I'm paralyzed, not dead. Not broken beyond repair." His voice roughened slightly. "I want someone who sees me as a man, not a thing to be pitied. Someone who chose to save me when logic said run. Someone who looks at me like you do, like I'm dangerous and interesting and still human despite everything." He rolled closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Expensive, subtle, masculine. "I want you, Chiamaka, but only if you want this too. Only if you can look at me in this chair and still see someone worth choosing." Chiamaka's mind raced through implications, through possibilities, through the sheer insanity of marrying a mafia boss she'd known for 3 weeks. Diving into a world of violence and blood and secrets, chaining herself to a dangerous man who'd been honest about what he was offering. Protection, yes, but also possession. But Seoul had already chewed her up and spit her out. The debt, the discrimination, the loneliness that ate at her every night in that tiny apartment, the constant fear of deportation, of poverty, of Mr. Kim's hands, or worse. What did she really have to lose that she hadn't already lost? 6 months, she said finally, voice steady despite her racing heart. Contract marriage for 6 months, trial period. Then we reassess honestly. If either of us wants out, we end it, clean. No threats, no manipulation, no deal. Jung's eyes gleamed with something like triumph, like joy. Negotiating already. I love it. He extended his hand. 6 months, full partnership, honest reassessment. If you want out, you walk away with money and documents and my help starting over. If you want to stay, he smiled. We'll discuss terms then. She shook his hand, feeling his strength, his warmth, the calluses that said he wasn't just powerful by proxy. Deal. Then welcome to the family, Mrs. Jung. He raised her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles with old-fashioned courtesy that should have seemed ridiculous but somehow didn't. I'll try to make you glad you chose this. The wedding was private, just Jung's lawyer, a stern woman in her 60s who handled all his legitimate business, and 2 witnesses from his organization who treated the ceremony with military seriousness. Chiamaka wore a simple white dress bought from a market stall for less than it was worth, altered to fit her curves by her own hands. Jung wore black, always black, she was learning, as if color had no place in his world. The ceremony took 10 minutes in a private room at City Hall, officiated by someone Jung's lawyer knew, someone who didn't ask questions about the foreign bride, or the wheelchair-bound groom, or the armed men waiting outside. The vows were standard, impersonal, purely legal. The kiss was brief, almost chaste, lips meeting for barely a heartbeat, but his lips lingered on hers just long enough to make her pulse race, to make heat pool low in her belly, to make her wonder what more would feel like. Mine, he murmured against her mouth, quiet enough that only she could hear. For 6 months, she reminded him, equally quiet. We'll see. The confidence in those 2 words should have worried her, didn't quite, which worried her more. Moving into Jung's compound was surreal beyond measure. Her room, their room, technically. Though he'd carefully offered separate quarters if she wanted them, if she needed space, was 10 times the size of her old apartment, silk sheets in deep purple, a bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in, heated floors, fixtures that gleamed like gold. Closets filled with clothes in her size that she hadn't chosen but fit perfectly, expensive fabrics and designer labels she'd only seen in magazines. How did you know my measurements? She asked, holding up a designer dress in deep emerald that would make her skin glow. Jung smiled from his wheelchair, watching her discover the room like a child discovering treasure. I pay attention to details. It's how you survive in my world. This is creepy. This is thorough. There's a difference. He rolled closer, eyes tracking the way her body moved. You're my wife now, Chimaka. Your safety, your comfort, your happiness. It's my responsibility. Let me fulfill it. I can take care of myself. I've been doing it for years. I know. I've seen your strength. His hand caught hers, pulled her closer to the wheelchair until she stood between his knees. But let me help anyway. Let me give you things you couldn't give yourself. Not because you're weak, but because I want to. Because you deserve luxury after years of struggling. It was hard to argue with someone who looked at her like she was precious, rare, worth protecting and cherishing. Chiamaka had spent so long fighting alone, being strong by necessity rather than choice, that accepting help felt like weakness, like surrender, like losing herself. But Jung never made her feel weak. He asked her opinions on security decisions, on business strategy, ease on problems he was navigating. When she suggested using African markets for dead drops, no one watches the Nigerian vendors. They're invisible to most Koreans. You could move anything through those stalls. He implemented it immediately, praising her thinking. Clever, he said, approving in a way that made her stand taller. What else do you see that we're missing? She found herself drawn into his world with surprising speed, learning the players through careful briefings, understanding the territories through maps and discussions, absorbing the unspoken rules that govern the underworld. Jung explained things patiently, never condescending, never treating her like decoration or a burden. He talked to her like an equal partner, asking, "What do you see?" when showing her surveillance footage. "What would you do?" when presenting problems. And she started seeing things, details others missed because they weren't looking properly, weren't trained to observe the way nurses learn to observe patients, the way immigrants learn to observe hostile environments. That man! She pointed to a figure in the corner of a screen showing Jung's warehouse, barely visible in the frame. He's been there 3 times this week. Different shifts, different times, but always that same corner. That's not normal for a guard rotation. They should cycle positions to stay alert. Jung's eyes sharpened, focused on where she was pointing. You're absolutely right. He made a call, rapid Korean she was starting to understand in fragments. I'll have him followed. Let's see where he goes when his shift ends. 2 days later, they had proof. The guard, a man named Lee, who'd worked for Jung for 6 months, was reporting to Kang Min Seok, selling information about shipments, schedules, weaknesses, small details that would add up to disaster. What do you want to do with him? Jung asked, voice cold enough to frost glass. Chimaka met his gaze, understanding the real question. Are you ready to make decisions that have consequences? Are you ready to be truly part of this? That's your world, your rules, your call, she said carefully. You're in this world now too. Your input matters to me. He rolled closer, took her hand. I'm not asking you to order his death. I'm asking what you think we should do. Strategy, Chimaka, not morality. She thought carefully, setting aside the instinct to say, let him go, because that wasn't strategy, that was sentiment. Information is valuable. More valuable than revenge. Use him. Feed him false intel. Make Kang think he's winning, that he knows our movements, then use that false confidence against him. Jung's smile was sharp, predatory, approving in a way that made something in her chest warm. Exactly what I was thinking. We make him think he has an advantage, we control what he knows, and we turn his supposed victory into his downfall. He squeezed her hand. We make a good team. Don't let it go to your head. Too late. But his smile was genuine, warm in a way she'd rarely seen. You're brilliant, Chimaka. I knew it from the moment you didn't run. The compliment made her flush, made her look away to hide her reaction, But it was going to both their heads, the partnership, the intimacy of shared secrets. Learn the way they moved around each other with increasing familiarity and comfort. Jung's hand on her waist when she passed him in the hallway, her fingers on his shoulder when she checked his healing wound, which was closing beautifully. Stolen glances across rooms filled with dangerous men who watched their boss's wife with careful respect. Mrs. Han, Jung's head of security, a 60-year-old woman who'd been with his family for decades, who moved like a grandmother but thought like a general, watched it all with knowing eyes. "You care for him," she said one afternoon, finding Chiamaka in the traditional garden behind the compound, where she discovered a peaceful spot among the carefully cultivated trees. "I'm his wife." The automatic response, the safe response. Contracted wife. Different thing. Mrs. Han's voice was kind but knowing. "But I see how you look at him when you think no one's watching, and how he looks at you all the time, not caring who sees." Chiamaka's defenses rose instinctively. "It's complicated. Love usually is." The older woman sat beside her on the wooden bench, moving with the stiffness of old injuries. "He was different before you. Harder, colder, more focused on revenge than living. Since you came, there's light in him again, hope, something human that I'd worried he'd lost after Jinwoo's betrayal. I'm not here to fix him. I'm not some magical cure for trauma." Chiamaka's voice was sharper than intended. "No, but you remind him he's still a man, still capable of feeling something other than anger and pain. That matters more than you know." Mrs. Han's gaze was steady, assessing. "Just be careful with his heart. It's more fragile than he pretends." "What about my heart?" Chiamaka couldn't help asking. "I think you already know the answer to that." Mrs. Han stood, patted her shoulder with surprising gentleness. "You're good for him, and he's good for you, in ways you'll understand eventually. Just don't fight it so hard that you miss what you're building together." The conversation stuck with Chiamaka like a burr, especially later when Jung asked her to dinner. Just them, no guards, no business talk, no discussion of strategy or threats. They ate in his private quarters, floor cushions arranged around a low table, soft light from paper lanterns, making the room glow warm and intimate. "Tell me about Lagos," Jung said, pouring her wine from a bottle that probably cost more than her old monthly salary. "What do you miss most?" "The noise, the chaos, the way nothing ever stops or slows down. Lagos just is, constantly, overwhelmingly." Chiamaka smiled, memory washing over her in a wave of homesickness she usually suppressed. "The market women who haggle like it's warfare, who'll argue over 50 naira like it's 50,000. The food. God, the food. Jollof rice cooked perfectly, suya from street vendors, chin-chin and puff-puff in a kara. My mother's cooking, which was terrible, but I miss it anyway. Do you want to go back?" The question was careful, neutral. She considered it honestly. "Eventually. Maybe. I don't know anymore." She met his eyes. "Lagos is home, but it's also where everything went wrong. My sister died there. Victor is there. Poverty is there. Coming to Seoul was supposed to be temporary, but going back feels like admitting defeat, or like moving forward." Jung reached across the table, took her hand. "If you want a visit to see your family, I'll arrange it. Security, money, whatever you need." The offer surprised her. "Why?" "Because you gave up your home to survive. You shouldn't have to give up your family, too." His thumb stroked her knuckles. "And because I want you to choose to stay here, with me. Not because you can't go back, but because this is where you want to be." Her heart hammered in her chest. "Jung, Ha-jun, please." The request was soft, almost vulnerable. "Ha-jun." His name felt intimate on her tongue, like a secret, like permission. "This is moving very fast. I'm a dying man, Chiamaka." His voice was matter-of-fact, not self-pitying. "Not from the bullet, from this life. Every day could be my last. Someone could succeed where Kang failed. A rival could decide I'm too powerful. The police could actually do their jobs for once. I don't have time for slow courtship and careful consideration." She squeezed his hand, feeling the strength in his fingers. "You're not dying, not on my watch." "Then stay on watch, stay with me." He pulled her hand to his lips, kissed her palm in a gesture so tender it made her breath catch. "I know 6 months was the deal, but I'm asking you to consider more. Consider forever. Forever is a long time. Then consider tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that." His eyes searched hers. "I'm falling in love with you, Chiamaka. Have been since you called me observant while I was bleeding in an alley. Tell me I'm not alone in this." The air between them thickened, uncharged with possibility and want and fear. He pulled her closer, wheelchair rolling forward until their faces were inches apart, until she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, could count his eyelashes, could feel his breath on her lips. "Tell me no," he whispered. "Tell me to stop and I will. Tell me you don't want this and I'll never ask again." I can't, she admitted, voice breaking slightly. I can't tell you that because it would be a lie. He kissed her then, not brief, not chaste like their wedding kiss, deep and hungry and claiming, his hand tangling in her natural hair, pulling her closer until she was practically in his lap. She melted into it, her hands finding his shoulders, his neck, tangling in his dark hair, feeling his strength, his need, his barely contained want. He tasted like wine and something darker, more complex, like danger and promise and possibility. Her body responded in ways she'd tried to ignore, heat pooling low, pulse racing, skin sensitizing everywhere he touched. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Young rested his forehead against hers. Stay. Not because of the contract, not because of fear or necessity, because you want this. Want me. I don't know what I want, she confessed, honesty feeling like the only safe ground. But I know I'm not ready to leave. Not yet. That's enough. His hand cupped her face, thumb stroking her cheekbone. For now. That's more than enough. Days blurred into weeks with surprising ease, finding a rhythm that felt almost natural. Chimaka found her place in Young's world, managing his medical needs with professional efficiency, offering strategic input that he valued and implemented. Mia becoming more than decoration, or nurse, or kept woman. She was his partner, genuinely, his confidant in ways that surprised them both, and increasingly, inevitably, his lover. Their intimacy grew in stolen moments that became less stolen and more deliberate, his mouth on her neck while reviewing security footage, making her lose track of what she was supposed to be watching, her hands exploring his chest while he briefed her on upcoming meetings, distracted and pleased by her touch. The way he looked at her curves with raw, undisguised appreciation that made her feel beautiful, powerful, desired in ways she'd never experienced. You're staring, she said one night, changing for bed in the bathroom doorway, aware of his eyes on her. Can you blame me? Jung's voice was rough, intimate, hungry. You're magnificent, Chimaka. Absolutely magnificent. She wore only a silk robe in deep burgundy, her dark skin glowing against the fabric in lamplight, curves unmistakable, generous, feminine. You say that to all your contract wives? Only the one who matters. Only you. He rolled closer, hands sliding up her thighs with sure confidence. Come here. She straddled his lap carefully, mindful of his paralysis, of the limitations his body imposed. But he pulled her down with surprising strength, his upper body powerful enough to compensate for what his lower body couldn't do. I've got you, he murmured. Always, I've got you. I know. And she did, surprisingly. Trusted him to catch her, to hold her, to not let her fall. They made love slowly, carefully, finding rhythms that worked for his body, for hers. He used his hands with skill that spoke of practice, of determination to please despite his limitations. His mouth on her breasts, her throat, her lips making her gasp his name until she forgot where she ended, and he began. Afterwards, she lay curled against his chest, his arms wrapped tight around her, their heartbeats synchronizing. I love you, Young whispered into her hair, quiet enough that she could pretend not to hear if she wanted to. Chimaka's breath caught, her body tensing slightly. June. I know. You don't have to say it back. I know it's soon. Know you're still figuring this out, still deciding if this is real or survival. His grip tightened, protective, possessive. But I needed you to know. I love you. Not because you saved me. Not because you're useful or beautiful or any of the surface things. I love who you are. Your courage, your compassion mixed with practicality. Your refusal to be less than you are, even when the world demands it. She turned in his arms, meeting his eyes in the low light. This is terrifying. I know that too. I'm still scared. Of this world you live in. Of losing myself in your life. Of what happens when people find out about my past, about the things I ran from. Her voice dropped. About what Victor did to me. His grip tightened almost painfully. Tell me, please. I need to know what hurt you. She'd been avoiding this, pushing it down, pretending her scars were invisible. But honesty felt necessary now, felt like the price of the intimacy they were building. Before Seoul, before I even thought about leaving Lagos, I had a different life planned. A man. His name was Victor Okonkwo. He said he loved me, said we'd build something together. Said all the things women want to hear. Her voice hardened, years of buried anger surfacing. Then I found out he was using me to get access to my family's land rights. We had property from my grandfather that was worth developing. Victor needed my signature, needed me to sign over rights that would have left my family with nothing. When I refused, when I stood up to him, She swallowed hard, Jung's hand stroking her back, patient, waiting. He tried to force me, beat me when I fought back, would have killed me or broken me completely, but my cousin intervened, got me out. And then Victor's family, they have money, connections, made sure nothing happened to him. The police wouldn't touch him. Justice doesn't exist for people like him in Lagos. Jung's face had gone deadly calm, the kind of calm that preceded violence. Where is he now? Lagos still walking free because his family has money, connections, because men like him always get away with it. The police wouldn't touch him. His uncle is a commissioner. His family donates to the right politicians. Bitterness leaked through despite her best efforts. I ran to Seoul to escape him, to be somewhere he couldn't find me, couldn't touch me. But sometimes I dream about him finding me anyway, about him hurting me again, and me being just as powerless to stop it. He won't. Jung's voice was absolute, carrying certainty like a weapon. I promise you, Chiamaka, he'll never touch you again. He'll never hurt you or anyone else ever again. You can't promise that. He's in Nigeria, thousands of miles away. You're here. Your power is here. Distance matters. Distance means nothing when you have resources. He pulled out his phone, fingers moving across the screen with purpose. Give me his full name, his business, his address, everything you know about his life now. Why? What are you going to do? Protect you. Properly. Completely. His eyes met hers, dark and determined. Because you're mine, and no one hurts what's mine without paying for it. That's not revenge, Chiamaka. That's justice. The kind that actually works. Something fierce and grateful surged through her, something she'd thought beaten out of her in Lagos. Victor Okonkwo, he works at a law firm in Victoria Island. Okonkwo and Associates, his family's firm. Lives in Lekki Phase 1, one of the expensive developments. Drives a black Range Rover. Has a wife now, and probably treating her the way he tried to treat me. Jung's fingers flew across the screen, messages going out to people she didn't know, couldn't track. Consider it handled. What are you going to do to him? Nothing loud, nothing traceable. Nothing that leads back to you or me. His voice was calm, businesslike, terrifying in its certainty. Just quiet justice. He'll lose everything that matters: reputation, job, freedom, respect. His family's influence won't protect him from evidence, from witnesses suddenly finding courage, from crimes he thought were buried coming to light, and he'll never know why. That's the beauty of quiet vengeance. It's thorough and permanent and doesn't require getting your hands bloody. Chiamaka should have felt horror, should have protested, should have said this was wrong. Maybe should have claimed the moral high ground. Instead, she felt relief wash over her like warm rain, like absolution, like finally, someone was on her side. Thank you. You never have to thank me for protecting you. It's what I do. It's what I'll always do. He pulled her close again, kissed her forehead. Sleep now. You're safe. You're mine. And I take care of what's mine. But Jung's world wasn't kind enough to let them hide in romance and whispered confessions forever. Kang Min-seok escalated, hitting Jung's shipments with coordinated precision, bribing officials who'd been loyal for years, spreading rumors that Jung was weak, distracted by his African whore, that his organization was vulnerable now that he'd gone soft for a woman. The insult reached Chiamaka through whispered conversations she wasn't meant to overhear. Why, through looks from Jung's men that mixed pity with contempt, through messages on her phone, blocked numbers, threats that made her hands shake. Your black cunt isn't worth dying for. Leave while you can. It stung. Of course it stung. But rage burned hotter than hurt. These men thought she made Jung weak. They thought she was a liability, a distraction, a pretty thing that had neutered a dangerous man. They were about to learn otherwise. The shipment next week, she said, studying the schedule Jung had shown her during a strategy meeting. The one Kang knows about through our spy. What if we use it as bait? Jung looked up from his desk, interest sharpening his features. Use it how? Everyone expects you to protect it, or reroute it, or increase security. What if you let him take it? Make it look easy? Make him think he's winning? Make him confident. She leaned against the desk, mind racing through possibilities. But the cargo isn't what he thinks. Make it worthless to him, or better, make it evidence of his other crimes. Plant something that would bring real authorities down on him, something he can't talk or bribe his way out of. Jung's eyes gleamed with predatory interest. Plant evidence in my own shipment. Your fake shipment. The real one goes a different route entirely. She pulled up a map on her phone, showing him routes through neighborhoods he wouldn't have considered. Through Ansan, the Nigerian community there, the African markets. I know people. Vendors, drivers, people who are invisible to Korean authorities because they're too busy watching the obvious routes. They'll move it quiet, no questions, want for the right price. You're brilliant. He pulled her into his lap, hands settling on her waist. How did I survive without you? Barely. She kissed his temple, feeling possessive and powerful and useful. Now, let's end Kang before he ends us. The plan unfolded with perfect precision over the next week. Jung's spy fed Kang carefully crafted information about the valuable shipment, electronics apparently worth millions, poorly guarded because Jung was distracted, vulnerable because he'd pulled resources to protect his new wife. Kang's men intercepted it eagerly, breaking into the shipping container with bolt cutters and crowbars, finding crates that looked exactly right. Inside, pharmaceutical drugs. Illegal, yes, but not Jung's. Documents planted carefully in waterproof packets showed the drugs belonged to Kang's operation. Shipped from his usual sources in China, manifests with his supplier's information, payment records that would trace directly back to his accounts. Anonymous tips reached police, multiple calls, different voices, all reporting suspicious activity at Kang's warehouses. Raids hit simultaneously, coordinated, devastating. His empire crumbled in 48 hours that felt like watching dominoes fall in beautiful sequence. Arrests, frozen assets, allies fleeing like rats from a sinking ship, bribes failing when evidence was too solid to ignore. Jung and Chiamaka watched news coverage from their compound, her seated on his lap, his arms around her waist, both of them sharing quiet satisfaction. "He's done," Jung said with deep satisfaction. 20 years minimum, probably more. His organization is dissolved, his assets seized, his protection gone. Good. Chiamaka felt no sympathy, no mercy. Kang had wanted her dead simply for existing near Jung, for being foreign and female and visible. Now he'd spend decades in prison, losing everything he'd built through violence and fear. And Victor? Jung pulled up his phone, showed her a news article from a Nigerian online newspaper. Prominent Lagos lawyer arrested in fraud, assault scandal, Okonkwo family legacy in ruins. Victor's face stared from the screen, handcuffed, disheveled, nothing like the polished predator she remembered. The article detailed charges, financial crimes, embezzlement from clients, assault allegations from multiple women who'd found courage when his protection crumbled. Turns out several women came forward with assault allegations once he lost his family's protection, Jung explained, their voice matter of fact. Plus financial crimes. He'd been embezzling from client accounts for years, covering it with his family's influence. When evidence appeared in the right hands, when witnesses suddenly felt safe talking, when his uncle the commissioner was implicated in the cover-up, he shrugged. The whole house of cards collapsed. He's looking at 15 to 20 years in a Nigerian prison, which, from what I understand, is significantly worse than a Korean prison. Chimaka's eyes burned with tears she wouldn't let fall. You did that, for me. I facilitated it. His crimes did the rest. Jung turned her face to his, thumbs wiping away tears that escaped despite her efforts. You're safe from him now, forever. He'll never hurt you or anyone else again. That's not revenge. That's justice. The kind that should have happened years ago. She kissed him deeply, gratefully, pouring everything she couldn't say into the press of her lips against his. Relief and gratitude and something deeper, something she wasn't quite ready to name but couldn't deny. I love you, she whispered against his mouth, the words falling out before she could stop them. Jung's smile could have lit Seoul, could have powered the entire city. Say it again. I love you, Jung Ha-jun, my dangerous, brilliant, vengeful husband. She kissed him again. My partner, yours, just yours. He pulled her closer, held her like she was precious, like she was everything. And you're mine, my wife, not contracted anymore, just mine. The contract? Fuck the contract. His language rarely got crude, which made it more impactful. I'm tearing it up. If you'll have me without legal agreements and time limits, if you'll choose this freely, I'm staying. You're staying. We're building something real. She looked at him seriously, seeing past the power and danger to the man underneath. The man who'd been betrayed and broken and rebuilt himself through sheer will. The man who'd seen her and chosen her and protected her with ruthless efficiency. Yes, I'm staying. I choose this. I choose you. Then we're really married now. He smiled, genuine and warm, in all the ways that matter. They made love that night with new desperation, new certainty, new understanding of what they'd built together. She was his, he was hers. The dangerous world outside could keep spinning. They had each other, and that was fortress enough. 3 months later, in early spring when Seoul's cherry blossoms painted the city pink, Chiamaka woke to Jung's phone buzzing insistently at 4 a.m. He grabbed it, face going hard in the blue light from the screen. What? She asked, sitting up immediately alert. You learned to wake fast in Jung's world. Kang escaped. Prison transfer went wrong. 3 guards dead. Transport vehicle ambushed. His voice was ice. He's out and in the wind. Her blood chilled despite the warm room. Where? Unknown. But he's got nothing to lose now. Prison was his future either way. Now he'll go down fighting. He'll come for us. For me, yes, but especially for you. Jung's hand found hers, squeezed. You're the visible weakness he thinks he can exploit. Then, we prepare. Chimaka's mind shifted to survival mode, the same mode that had kept her alive in Lagos. Increase security. Lock down the compound and... She hesitated. What? Jung's eyes were on her, intense, reading her thoughts. Set a trap. Let him think he found us vulnerable. Somewhere away from here, somewhere we control every angle, every entrance, every possibility. She met his gaze. Somewhere we can end this, permanently. Jung studied her for a long moment. You want to lure him out? I want this finished. No more looking over shoulders. No more wondering when he'll strike, who he'll hurt to get to you. No more fear. Her eyes hardened with determination Jung had seen before. I want him ended, quietly, permanently, however you do these things. That's my girl, pride colored his voice. Brave and vicious when necessary. They chose an abandoned warehouse in Incheon, Jung's territory, every camera monitored, and every entrance controlled, every angle covered. The building had been a legitimate business once, before economic downturn, and bad management killed it. Now it was empty shell, perfect for their purposes. Word was leaked carefully through channels they knew Kang was monitoring. Jung and his wife would be there to oversee a shipment, minimal security because the route was supposed to be secret, an opportunity too good to miss. Kang took the bait exactly as they'd hoped. Chimaka watched from Jung's mobile command center, a reinforced van parked 3 blocks away. As Kang and 5 armed men entered the warehouse through the east entrance they'd deliberately left accessible. Jung sat beside her, calm, wheelchair positioned perfectly to see all the screens, hand resting on her thigh. Now, he said quietly into his radio. Doors slammed shut with sounds like gunshots. Magnetic locks engaging, steel barriers falling, every exit sealing simultaneously. Lights blazed from hidden fixtures, turning the dim warehouse into a floodlit stage. Kang spun, seeing cameras, seeing his men reflected in dozens of screens, seeing the trap close with mechanical precision. Jung's voice boomed through speakers they'd positioned throughout the space. Did you really think I'd be that careless, Kang? That I'd leave my wife vulnerable? That I wouldn't see you coming from miles away? On screen, Kang's face twisted with rage, with realization, with the understanding that he'd been outmaneuvered completely. Hiding behind cameras now, cripple? Face me like a man. I am a man, a smart one, with a very intelligent wife. Jung gestured for Chimaka to speak, handed her the microphone. Where she leaned in, voice steady. You should have left us alone, Mr. Kang. Should have accepted your loss and your prison sentence. Should have understood that revenge wouldn't fix what you broke. But you came for us, for me, threatened to hurt me to hurt my husband. That was your mistake. The African bitch, Kang spat, looking directly at a camera like he could see through it to her. I'll gut you slowly. I'll make him watch before I kill him. No, Chimaka's voice was steel, was certainty. You won't touch anyone again. You won't hurt or threaten or terrify. You're done, Kang Min-seok, completely done. Jung pressed a button. Gas hissed through carefully positioned vents. Not lethal, not poison, just incapacitating. Sleep agent, fast-acting, impossible to fight. Kang and his men collapsed within seconds. Weapons clattering useless on concrete. Police are en route, Jung said to Chimaka, eyes still on the screens. With evidence of Kang's escape, his weapons, his plans to commit murder that we've carefully documented and will hand over. Maximum security prison this time. Solitary confinement, no transfers, no possibility of escape. He'll die in a cage, alone, forgotten. Chimaka watched Kang's unconscious form on the screen, his face slack, vulnerable, powerless. She felt nothing. No triumph, no guilt, no satisfaction beyond the cold certainty of a threat neutralized. It's over. One major threat down. Others will come eventually. They always do in this world. Jung pulled her into his lap, careful of the small swell of her belly that neither of them had mentioned yet, but both knew was there. But we'll handle them. Together. Forever together. She kissed him, tasting promise and partnership, but forever had complications neither of them had planned for. 2 weeks later, Chimaka missed her period for the 2nd month running. The pregnancy test confirmed what her body already knew, what her changing shape suggested, what the morning nausea screamed. She stared at the positive result in their bathroom, hands shaking with fear and wonder and complicated joy. She hadn't planned this, hadn't discussed children with Jung beyond abstract future possibilities. Their marriage had been built on survival, not family planning, not domestic dreams. Chimaka? Jung's voice from the bedroom. You okay in there? She walked out, test in hand, and just showed it to him wordlessly. His face went through shock, visible fear, then pure joy that transformed his usual careful control into something open and vulnerable. "We're having a baby." "Apparently." Her voice was small, uncertain. "I know we didn't plan. I don't even know how it happened. I was careful, but I don't care about plans." He pulled her close, one hand on her still flat stomach, possessive and protective. "This is ours, you and me, a family, something real and permanent and—" His voice broke slightly. "Something I never thought I'd have after Jin Woo crippled me, after I thought I'd lost the chance to be normal. In this world? With this life? It's dangerous. Then we make it safer. We protect them with everything we have. We build walls and systems and power until nothing can touch them." He looked up at her, eyes fierce with determination. "We protect you and our child like we're protecting the most valuable thing in the world. Because you are." "As what? Your nurse? Your prisoner? Your—" She couldn't finish, couldn't voice all her fears. "As my wife, my partner, the mother of my child." He pulled her down to sit on his lap. "Marry me again. For real this time. Not contract, not arrangement, not survival. Marry me because you love me and I love you, and we're building something worth protecting with our lives." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Happy, scared, overwhelmed tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes, forever yes. They remarried a month later in a small ceremony. Mrs. Han as witness along with Young's most trusted men, a handful of people who'd become family in the month since Chiamaka had stumbled into this world. She wore traditional Korean hanbok in white and gold, a Young in a black suit that made him look devastating. And when they kissed, it felt like promises actually meant to be kept, like vows that would survive whatever came next. The pregnancy was hard in ways that surprised even Chiamaka, who'd thought she understood physical hardship. Morning sickness that lasted all day and into the night, making her retch until her throat was raw and her ribs ached from the violence of it. Exhaustion that hit like trucks, that made climbing stairs feel like scaling mountains, that turned simple tasks into monumental efforts. Body changes that terrified and amazed her, her breasts swelling painfully, her belly expanding in ways that made her feel alien in her own skin. Hormones that made her cry at commercials and rage at minor inconveniences. Some days she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. Her skin glowed. Yes, the way everyone said pregnant women glowed, but she also felt swollen and uncomfortable and strange. Her feet hurt constantly from carrying extra weight. Her back ached in new places. Sleep became impossible. Too big to get comfortable. Too anxious about the future to rest properly. Too aware of the life growing inside her to truly relax. But Jung was devoted in ways that made the difficulty bearable. He cared for her with gentle hands that seemed impossible for a man in his position, for someone who commanded violence with such casual efficiency. He hired the best obstetricians money could buy, doctors who made house calls, who answered questions at midnight, who treated her like royalty instead of an inconvenience. Then he ensured her comfort with obsessive attention to detail, installing handrails in the bathroom when she started getting dizzy, buying 7 different types of pregnancy pillows until they found one that worked, keeping her favorite foods stocked, even when her preferences changed daily. He read pregnancy books with academic thoroughness, highlighting passages and asking her questions like he was studying for an exam. He attended every doctor's appointment, taking notes, asking medical questions that impressed the obstetricians. He learned to give her foot massages that eased the swelling, to rub her back in ways that relieved the constant ache, to hold her hair when morning sickness struck at inconvenient moments. "You're hovering again," she said one afternoon in her 7th month, amused despite her discomfort, because he checked on her for the 5th time in an hour, bringing water, asking if she needed anything, adjusting the curtains to keep sun out of her eyes. "I'm being attentive to my wife's needs. There's a difference. You're being ridiculous. I'm pregnant, not dying. I'm being in love with my pregnant wife and terrified something might go wrong." His hand rested on her swollen belly, palms spread wide, feeling their daughter kick with force that made Chiamaka wince. "This is terrifying, Chiamaka. More terrifying than being shot, than facing Kang, than anything I've done in this violent life. The idea of something happening to you or the baby, it unmans me in ways nothing else ever has." She softened, taking his hand, pressing it more firmly against her belly where their daughter was doing gymnastics. "We'll be okay. I'm strong. Lagos made me strong. Losing my sister made me stronger. Surviving Seoul's prejudice made me tougher. This world you brought me into made me fierce. The baby's strong too. She kicks like she's training for soccer. We're fighters, all 3 of us. We survive. It's what we do." I know intellectually that you're capable and strong, and probably safer than I am in many ways. His voice dropped, became vulnerable in a way he rarely allowed. But knowing that doesn't stop the fear. Doesn't stop me from imagining every possible thing that could go wrong. Doesn't stop me from checking medical statistics and worst-case scenarios and... He stopped, jaw tight. I lost everything once when Jinwoo betrayed me. Lost my legs, my trust, my belief in loyalty. I can't lose you too. I can't lose this family we're building. You won't. She cupped his face, made him meet her eyes. I promise you, Hajun. We're not going anywhere. You're stuck with us, with me and this tiny football player who won't let me sleep, for better or worse. In sickness and health. All those vows we took, I meant them, every word. So did I. He kissed her palm, then her belly, speaking to their daughter through skin and muscle and fluid. Both of you. My whole world in 2 bodies. The tenderness in his voice made Chiamaka's eyes burn. This man, dangerous, ruthless, feared by Seoul's underworld, was gentle with her in ways that contradicted everything people assumed about him. He was complex, layered, more than the monster people saw from a distance. I love you, she whispered, not for the first time, but feeling it more deeply than ever. I love who you are with me, who you're becoming for our daughter, the father you're going to be. I love you more than I knew I could love anything. His hand stayed on her belly, protective and possessive. You saved me, Chiamaka. Not just in that alley. You save me every day from becoming the monster everyone expects. You make me want to be better, to deserve you, to deserve this. You already do. She believed it, despite everything, despite the violence and the danger and the blood on his hands. Because his hands were gentle with her, would be gentle with their daughter, chose tenderness when violence would be easier. Now let me worry anyway. Let me care and fuss and hover. It's how I show love. The baby, a girl they would name Zuri, Ni Swahili for beautiful, chosen carefully to honor Chiamaka's African heritage while giving their daughter a name that would sound natural anywhere, came on a humid summer night in late July 6 months later. The labor started just after midnight, with contractions that felt like someone was wrapping steel bands around her middle and tightening them systematically. Chiamaka had attended births before in Lagos, had studied the process academically, thought she understood what to expect. She was wrong. Nothing prepared you for the reality of your own body trying to turn itself inside out, for pain that eclipsed every other hurt you'd ever experienced, for the animal terror that accompanied the most natural process in the world. 18 hours. That's how long it took, each hour stretching into subjective eternity. Jung never left her side despite her screaming at him, despite her saying things she'd apologize for later, despite her gripping his hand so hard she left bruises. He coached her breathing when she forgot how, wiped sweat from her face with cold cloths, told her she was strong and brave and doing perfectly, even when she felt like she was dying. Mrs. Han assisted, efficient and calm, her presence more comforting than Chiamaka would have predicted. The Dr. Jung had hired Dr. Park, a woman in her 50s who delivered hundreds of babies and treated Chiamaka with professional warmth, guided her through each stage with patient instructions. "Push," Dr. Park commanded. "Good, that's good, again." Chiamaka pushed, screaming through clenched teeth, feeling like she was being split apart. Jung's hand in hers, his voice in her ear. "You can do this, you're almost there. I love you. You're magnificent." And then, after what felt like forever, after pain beyond description, after exhaustion that went bone deep, a cry, not hers. Higher, thinner, outraged, their daughter announcing her displeasure at the world she'd just entered. "It's a girl," Dr. Park said unnecessarily, holding up a tiny, bloody, perfect infant who screamed with impressive lung capacity. Healthy, strong, absolutely beautiful. They cleaned Zuri quickly while Chiamaka caught her breath, while her body tried to remember how to exist without contractions. Then they placed her in Chiamaka's arms, this tiny creature, barely 7 pounds, with dark skin still covered in vernix, eyes squeezed shut, mouth open in continued protest. "She's perfect," Jung whispered, on tears streaming openly down his face without shame or attempt to hide them. "Absolutely perfect. Look at her, Chiamaka. Look at what we made." Chiamaka looked down at her daughter, their daughter, and felt something shift in her chest. This tiny person, who'd been an abstract concept, a swelling in her belly, a series of kicks and movements, was suddenly real, solid, here, depending on her completely. Terror mixed with joy in equal measure. How was she supposed to keep this fragile thing alive? How was she supposed to raise a child in Jung's dangerous world? How was she supposed to be someone's mother when she'd spent most of her adult life just trying to survive? But then Zuri's eyes opened. dark like Jung's, already alert despite being minutes old, and something in Chiamaka understood. This was why people fought, why they endured, why they survived against impossible odds. "Hi, baby girl," Chiamaka whispered, voice rough from screaming. "Hi, Zuri, I'm your mama, I'm so glad you're here." Jung's hand covered both of theirs, his touch gentle despite his strength. "Welcome to the world, Zuri Chiamaka Jung. You're loved, so incredibly loved, by both of us, forever." 10 fingers. Chiamaka counted them obsessively, needing to verify completeness. 10 toes, each one perfect and tiny. Her father's sharp features already visible in miniature. Her mother's full lips, a blend of genetics and hope and future. "She's beautiful," Jung repeated, seeming unable to say anything else, his usual eloquence reduced to simple truth. "The most beautiful thing I've ever seen," after her mother. They named her carefully over the next few hours. She'd discussing options while Zuri slept between them. Zuri for beautiful, Chiamaka for her grandmother's name, for connection to heritage and family, Jung for her father's protection, for the weight of his power and resources. A name that honored all of her. African and Korean, female and strong, beautiful and fierce. Life shifted again, in ways both expected and surprising, beautiful and overwhelming. Chiamaka divided her time between motherhood, which was exponentially harder than any medical training or life experience had prepared her for, and helping Jung navigate his increasingly complex world. Motherhood was relentless. Zuri needed to eat every 2 hours, screaming with outrage if they were late by even minutes. She needed diaper changes constantly, her tiny body producing impressive amounts of waste. She needed to be held, rocked. I'd sung too, comforted when nothing visible was wrong, but everything felt catastrophic to her infant nervous system. Chiamaka learned to function on fragmented sleep, 20 minutes here, an hour there if she was lucky, never enough to feel truly rested. She learned to eat one-handed while nursing. She learned that her body belonged to someone else now, that privacy was a luxury from the past, that showering required planning and assistance. Some days she cried from exhaustion, from the overwhelming weight of responsibility, from the fear that she was doing everything wrong. Some days she resented Zuri's neediness, then felt guilty for the resentment. Some days she looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully and felt love so intense it was almost painful. A fierce protective instinct that would make her kill without hesitation to keep this tiny person safe. Jung helped more than most Korean fathers would, more than tradition demanded. He changed diapers without complaint, mastering the art of one-handed changes from his wheelchair with impressive efficiency. He learned to make bottles at 3 a.m. when Chiamaka's milk supply wasn't enough. He walked, rolled the compound with Zuri against his chest when she was fussy, singing Korean lullabies his own mother had taught him decades ago. "You're good at this," Chiamaka said one night, watching him rock their daughter with practiced ease, his large hand supporting her tiny head with careful precision. "I'm terrified every second," he admitted. "She's so small, so breakable. How did humans ever survive as a species when babies are this fragile? Through community, through help, through stubborn refusal to let them break." She smiled, exhausted and grateful. "And through fathers like you who stay up all night so their wives can sleep for 4 consecutive hours. It's not enough." His voice was frustrated, limited by his paralysis in ways that clearly aided him. "I can't walk her around like you do. Can't carry her upstairs if she's crying and you're occupied. Can't. You're doing everything that matters." Chiamaka crossed to them, kissed his forehead. "You're present. You're trying. You're loving her with everything you have. That's what she'll remember, not what you couldn't do physically, but that you never stopped trying." Mrs. Han became Zuri's honorary grandmother with official dedication, a fierce and protective in ways that made Chiamaka's heart swell. She taught Chiamaka Korean lullabies and traditional practices, how to properly bathe a baby, how to make medicinal teas for recovery, how to wrap Zuri in traditional swaddling that seemed to soothe her better than modern blankets. "In Korea, we believe the first 100 days are crucial," Mrs. Han explained, showing Chiamaka how to prepare seaweed soup that would help her recover. "The baby is adjusting to the world. The mother is healing. Both are vulnerable. We protect them fiercely." "We've been doing that," Chiamaka said, gesturing to the increased security, the guards who now patrolled specifically to protect Zuri. "No, not like that." Mrs. Han's voice was patient. "Not just physical protection, emotional, spiritual. We create calm spaces. We limit visitors. We let mother and baby bond without the world's interference. Your Western way, returning to normal immediately, it's not healthy." Chiamaka listened, absorbing wisdom from a culture not her own but learning to appreciate it. She spent the first 3 months mostly secluded in their quarters, focusing solely on Zuri and recovery. Jung handled business from their bedroom when necessary, bringing meetings to him rather than leaving her alone. The compound transformed from fortress to home in ways that moved her unexpectedly. Toys appeared in corners where weapons used to be displayed, bright, colorful, carefully chosen for developmental appropriateness. Baby laughter echoed in halls that had only heard serious business discussions, the sound transforming the atmosphere entirely. Joy mixed with danger in complicated ways. Zuri's innocence existing alongside her father's violence without contradiction, because both were real, both were necessary, both were love expressed differently. Chiamaka's role evolved too. She was still Jung's partner in strategy, still the observant eye that caught details others missed. But now she did it while nursing, while bouncing a fussy baby, while operating on 3 hours of sleep. She learned to make decisions while exhausted, to think strategically while her body recovered from childbirth, to balance motherhood and partnership without losing herself in either role. But Victor's ghost wasn't done haunting them, even from across oceans and continents. News reached them through Jung's international contacts 6 months after Zuri's birth. Victor had been released early. Charges mysteriously dropped, evidence suddenly unreliable. No witnesses recanting. Money had changed hands, favors had been called in, and he'd walked free despite everything. And he'd fled Nigeria, headed to Seoul, leaving digital threats about reclaiming what was stolen, about making that black bitch pay for ruining his life. "He's coming for you," Jung said, voice deadly calm, in a way that meant violence was coming. "Let him come." Chiamaka's voice was cold, hard, nothing like the woman who'd first arrived in Seoul, scared and alone. "I'm not that frightened girl anymore who ran from Lagos. I'm your wife, Zuri's mother. I've survived your world, built power in it. Let him see what I've become." Jung made calls, mobilized his entire network across Asia. But Victor moved smart, staying hidden in Seoul's foreign communities, leaving traces but no solid locations, using the very invisibility that Koreans assigned to foreigners as cover. A game of cat and mouse that frayed everyone's nerves. Then, Chiamaka received a message on her phone. Unknown number, blocked ID, words that made her blood run cold. "I'm watching your daughter. Pretty thing. Would be a shame if something happened to her. You took everything from me. Now I'll take everything from you." Rage, unlike anything she'd known, beyond fear, beyond reason, flooded through her like fire. Not fear for herself. Pure, incandescent fury that someone would threaten her child, would dare to even think about hurting Zuri. "Find him," she told Jung, voice shaking with controlled violence. "Right now. I don't care what it costs or what you have to do. Find him." Jung's network worked overtime, cameras, informants, digital tracking, money flowing to anyone with information. 3 days later, they located Victor in a cheap hotel in Dongdaemun, the same neighborhood where Chiamaka had once bought her yellow Ankara dress, waiting, planning, stockpiling weapons for some desperate play. "What do you want to do?" Jung asked, giving her the choice she deserved. Chiamaka's answer was simple, absolute. "I want to face him, end this myself. He threatened my daughter. He dies knowing I'm the one who destroyed him, knowing I won, knowing he lost everything to the woman he tried to break. It's dangerous to face him directly. I don't care." She met Jung's eyes, letting him see her determination. "He terrorized me in Lagos, made me run halfway around the world. And now he threatens my child? No. He ends, and I'm there to see it." Jung studied her for a long moment, seeing the steel in his wife's eyes, the mother's fury that transcended fear. "Then we do it your way. But my men surround the location. One wrong move, and he's dead." "Agreed." They lured Victor to a neutral location, a closed restaurant Jung owned in Itaewon, after hours, empty except for them. Chiamaka walked in alone through the front door, Jung waiting in shadows with armed men stationed outside every exit, cameras recording everything for evidence and insurance. Victor sat at a table in the dark restaurant, older than she remembered, harder, eyes still holding that entitled cruelty that had terrified her once. "Chiamaka, you look different, successful, like you've done well for yourself on my ruin." "I am different." She stayed standing, arms crossed, refusing to show weakness. "And your ruin was your own doing, not mine. You did that with your crimes, your violence, your arrogance. Had to come all this way. You took everything from me, my career, my reputation, my freedom, my life." He stood, approaching slowly like he thought she might run. "All because you couldn't give me what was rightfully mine. I was never yours. The land wasn't yours. Nothing you wanted had anything to do with rights, only with power and theft. You were promised to me. Your family agreed to the arrangement. They had no right to promise me to anyone. I'm not property." Her voice cut sharp, years of anger finally free. "And you had no right to hurt me when I refused, to try to force me, to beat me, to think you owned me like some object to possess." Victor's face darkened with familiar rage. "I loved you. You loved the idea of controlling me, not the same thing. Love doesn't use fists and threats and violence to get what it wants." She pulled out her phone, showed him photos of Jung, of Zuri, of her life now. "This is my family. My life, built on actual love and partnership. And you're not part of it. You never will be. That crippled gangster, that half-breed baby." Victor laughed cruelly, the sound grating. "You think that's better than what I offered? You're a whore who got lucky. Infinitely better. Because they chose me as I am, and I chose them. No force, no lies, no violence, just love." Chimaka's smile was sharp, victorious. "You failed, Victor. You tried to break me and I'm stronger. You tried to ruin me and I'm successful. You tried to own me and I'm free. That's what kills you, not what I did to you, but that I won." Victor lunged, hands reaching for her throat with violence she'd feared once upon a time. Jung's wheelchair rolled from shadows, gun in hand, pointed directly at Victor's head. "Touch her and die, right here, right now. One bullet and you're erased." Victor froze, seeing the weapon, seeing the cold certainty in Jung's eyes, seeing death closer than he'd ever been. "You threatened my daughter," Jung said conversationally, like discussing weather. "My wife, my family. Generally, people who do that don't live long in my world. Actually, they don't live at all." "You can't kill me," Victor blustered, trying for authority he didn't have. "There are laws here. This is Korea, not some African country where you can just murder people. Not for men like you. Not in my territory. Not when you threaten what's mine." Jung's finger tightened on the trigger. "Are professional. Practiced. Any last words?" "Wait." Chimaka's voice stopped him, stopped everything. She walked to Victor, looked him in the eyes without flinching, without fear. "I want him to live." Victor's relief was visible, pathetic. "I want him to live," she continued, voice hard as diamonds, "knowing he has nothing, that the woman he tried to break is thriving, that his threats meant nothing, that he's powerless and pathetic and beneath my notice. I want him to wake up every day in whatever hell we send him to, knowing I won, knowing I'm happy, knowing he failed completely." She turned to Jung. "Ruin him. Take everything. But let him live with the knowledge that I destroyed him by succeeding, by being happy, by winning in every way that matters. Make his life a living hell, but let him live it." Jung's smile was vicious, disapproving, dangerous. "As you wish, my love." Victor's ruin was complete and quiet and thorough. Bank accounts drained to zero, passport flagged internationally, warrants issued in Nigeria for crimes Jung's network uncovered and documented, evidence planted that would hold up to any scrutiny. He was deported within days, facing decades in Nigerian prison for fraud and assault and corruption charges that finally stuck when his family's protection crumbled under weight of evidence. He left Korea in handcuffs, knowing Chimaka's mercy had been crueler than death, knowing she'd won so completely that his defeat would follow him forever. Back at the compound, Chimaka nursed Zuri in the quiet of their bedroom, Jung beside her in his wheelchair, watching with soft eyes that held more love than she'd thought possible to contain. "You were magnificent," he said quietly. "Powerful, in control, everything I knew you could be. I was angry, and terrified, and determined." She looked down at Zuri, perfect and innocent and oblivious to the violence that surrounded her birth and protected her existence. "You were powerful," Jung corrected. "There's a difference between anger and power. You chose mercy with purpose, not weakness. Stayed yourself while protecting our family. That's strength." Chimaka leaned into his touch when his hand found her face, exhausted and relieved and grateful beyond measure. "Is it over? Really, truly over with all of them? With Victor and Kang? Yes. With this life?" His voice was honest, gentle. "There'll always be threats, new rivals, old grudges, ambitious subordinates, but we handle them. Together. Like we always have." Zuri finished nursing, fell asleep against Chimaka's chest with the sudden completeness only babies managed. She looked down at her daughter. Perfect, innocent, oblivious to the darkness required to protect her light. "She'll never know this world," Chimaka said fiercely, protective instinct roaring. "The danger, the fear, the violence that surrounds us. We'll keep her safe from all of it." "Yes." Jung's hand covered hers on Zuri's back, warm and sure. "We will. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we protect her. We protect each other. We survive and thrive and refuse to let this world break what we've built." They sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of Seoul filtering through windows, traffic, voices, life continuing in its complicated way. Their world was dangerous, violent, unforgiving. But in this moment, in this room, they had peace. They had each other. They had Zuri. Chiamaka thought back to that night in the alley, the blood, the choice, the moment everything changed. She should have walked away, should have let Young bleed out like Seoul's streets demanded, should have protected herself instead of a stranger. But she hadn't, and it destroyed everything she thought she knew about safety, about love, about the thin line between protection and possession. But it also built something new, something fierce, something worth fighting for with everything she had. Young's hand squeezed hers. "What are you thinking, my love?" "That I'd do it again. All of it. Every dangerous choice, every terrifying moment, on every step that brought me here. Even marrying a paralyzed gangster who dragged you into his violent world? Especially that." She met his eyes, saw love and danger and promise mixed together in equal measure. "You make the danger worth it. You and Zuri. This life we've built from blood and choices and stubborn refusal to quit." He pulled her close, careful of Zuri sleeping between them, and kissed her deeply. "Forever, Chiamaka. You and me and our girl. Forever navigating this dark world together, protecting each other, loving each other despite everything that says we shouldn't. Forever," she agreed. But even as she said it, even as she believed it with everything she was, Chiamaka knew the truth that Young knew too. In his world, in their world, forever was a promise made in blood, kept with violence, uncherished in stolen moments of peace between inevitable storms. It was fragile and fierce and worth fighting for with everything they had. And she'd chosen it willingly, would choose it again, would keep choosing it every day because the alternative, safety without him, peace without this family, was worse than any danger they might face together. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mrs. Han. New threat detected. Surveillance shows unknown men watching the compound. Possible scouts from Young's rivals regrouping. "We need to talk strategy." Chiamaka read it, felt the familiar surge of adrenaline and fear and determination. She looked at Young, saw understanding and readiness in his eyes. "It never ends, does it?" she said quietly. Statement more than question. "No, but we knew that when we started." He took Zuri gently and cradled their daughter against his chest with practiced care. "Get some rest. I'll handle initial security checks, make sure we're prepared." "Ha, June, I've got this. You've fought enough today, my warrior wife." His smile was gentle, loving, proud. "Let me protect you for once. Let me stand guard while you rest." Chiamaka wanted to argue, wanted to insist on helping, on being strong and capable and useful. But exhaustion won. The exhaustion of years of fighting, of today's confrontation, of the constant vigilance their life required. She kissed him, kissed Zuri's sleeping head, and climbed into bed fully clothed, too tired for anything else. As she drifted into uneasy sleep, she heard Young's voice, low and deadly, making calls, mobilizing defenses, being the monster he'd always been. But now, being her monster, their monster, the protector of their small, perfect, fiercely defended family. Tomorrow, they'd face the new threat together. Tonight, she'd rest, knowing he stood watch, knowing he'd die before letting anything harm them, knowing she'd do the same for him. In the world of quiet vengeance and dangerous love, that was as close to a happy ending as they'd ever get. And somehow, miraculously, it was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Would you fight for love in a dangerous world, or walk away to stay safe? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read everyone, and your thoughts fuel these stories. And if this story kept you on edge, if Chiamaka and Jung's journey made you feel something real, hit that like button and subscribe to Love and Tension for more stories that blur the line between passion and danger, between survival and love, and between who we are and who we become for the people we cherish. Your support keeps these stories coming, keeps me writing the complicated love stories that real life demands. Thank you for listening.